Daniel Popper just dropped something nobody saw coming, and in a minute I'll tell you why it's got all of Ashburn buzzing. Washington shook up the roster in one single day. A kicker gone, 4 new faces in, and there's an injury the team is straight up hiding. And Jackery Krosky Merritt, Bill, came back looking like a different player, bigger, stronger, with one goal in mind that could flip the whole backfield. Raise hail! Alright, let's take this one in parts, because there are 2 layers here and both of them matter. The good layer first. Dan Quinn promised on Sunday that both Nick Allegretti and John Bates would be back on the field this week, and he delivered. This Tuesday, in the first practice after the weekend off, there they were, working through drills with their teammates, and even picking up reps in 11-on-11 work. Allegretti hadn't set foot on the field since day 1 of camp, weeks of rehab, while all we saw was his name on the injury list with no real explanation. He said it himself, it was awesome to be back out there with his teammates after everything, and he confirmed he was on a pitch count for his first practice back, but the plan is to push as hard as he can to make up for the lost reps. Bates returned the same day, though we don't have quotes from him on his process yet. And look, this isn't some minor guy returns to practice story, whatever it might sound like. Allegretti is a garden center, a 2-time Super Bowl champion out of Kansas City, and this front office brought him in specifically to stabilize the middle of the offensive line after Tyler Biadasz walked in free agency. Him getting back out there, even on a limited pitch count, means Washington gets control back over one of the most delicate spots on the entire line. Center isn't just any position. The center makes the protection calls, adjusts the blocking scheme based on what he sees from the defensive front, and if that piece isn't locked in with the quarterback, both the run game and the pass protection take the hit. Bates gives Dan Quinn back a complete piece at tight end, a guy who blocks with real toughness and gives Cliff Kingsbury another 2-way option in the offense. The rest of today's practice had real tactical juice too. On the offensive side, Brandon Coleman keeps developing at left tackle, and his quick feet and hands showed up on a solid pass pro rep against Joshua Josephs. Chris Paul had a good rep against Charles Omenihu, adjusting to Omenihu's power and using clean footwork to keep his leverage. And Sam Cosmi keeps dominating these drills. Today he stopped Darren Payne cold on a bull rush. For anybody who doesn't live in the trenches every day, that's Cosmi winning the initial point of contact against one of the best interior defenders in the whole league. That's not a small thing. On the defensive side, there were absences worth tracking. Johnny Newton, Jordan Magee, Odafe Owe, and Kelevon Chesson, all 4 out of practice today. Dan Quinn didn't give an update on any of them, so he'll probably get asked tomorrow at his press conference. I'm not going to speculate on severity without real information, but 4 simultaneous absences on the defensive front right as the team heads toward the August 26th roster cutdown is worth watching closely. And now let's talk about Jaden Daniels, because he had a 2-sided day. He threw his first interception of camp, but honestly it was more of an opportunistic play by Amik Robertson than a quarterback mistake. Daniels was targeting Chigo Okonkwo, the ball bounced off the tight end's hands, and Robertson was right there to capitalize. Daniels didn't let it rattle him. On the very next play, he connected with Jalen Lane with 0 hesitation. But the moment that actually got me off the couch was the 2-minute drill. The situation, offense down by 2, needs a field goal to win, 55 seconds on the clock. Daniels didn't even need all that time. He completed a pass to Stephon Diggs on the right sideline, then found Okonkwo running wide open down the middle of the field. Okonkwo caught it in stride and took it straight to the end zone. To me, that's the kind of read under pressure that separates elite level quarterbacks from everybody else. Reading the clock, reading the coverage, and executing without hesitation. And the day closed with good news for the defense too. Percy Butler made a one-handed grab on a pass from Athon Kaliakmanis, his first interception of camp. Butler's known for his leadership on special teams, but he's clearly trying to show he can contribute as a starting safety too. Now, the layer I really want you to sit with alongside me, because this is where the second part of this story comes in. While all of this was happening in Ashburn, something rough happened to Tyler Biadasz, the center Washington let walk back in March, during a joint practice between the Chargers and the 49ers. According to Chargers reporter Fernando Ramirez, Biadasz left practice on a cart, helped up by 2 trainers, and slapped the cart when he sat down. Justin Herbert and several teammates came over to console him. Daniel Popper of The Athletic wrote that Biadasz couldn't put any weight on his leg. There's no official diagnosis yet, so I'm not going to speculate on the exact injury, but the footage that circulated today was hard to watch. And before I say anything else, I want to be clear. I wish Biadasz a full recovery. This is a guy who gave this franchise 2 solid seasons, 31 starts, and helped us get to the conference championships. Nothing I'm about to say is meant to mock his bad luck. With that said, I do want to talk about the business side, because it's impossible to ignore. Washington released Biadasz to clear $8.3 million in cap space, and the Chargers signed him almost immediately to a 3-year, $30 million deal. At the time, that decision sparked real debate among the fan base. There were people, and I won't lie to you, who thought Adam Peters was making a mistake letting go of one of the best centers in the conference. Bleacher Report had actually named him the best center in the NFC East heading into last season, but the front office already had a plan. Bring in Nick Allegretti, a 2-time Super Bowl champion, at a more manageable salary, and bet that you can get ahead of the natural decline of a center in his 30s better than you can react to it after the fact. My personal opinion here, and I want to be clear about this isn't about celebrating someone else's injury. That would be flat out disrespectful toward a professional who earned his place in this league. This is about recognizing that Washington's front office made a risk management decision, not a sentimental one, and today, in the harshest and most unexpected way possible, that decision ended up looking prophetic. Adam Peters can't predict injuries. Nobody can. But he can build a roster where a well-timed, well-thought-out exit doesn't leave you exposed when the worst-case scenario finally happens in someone else's uniform. And here's my prediction, with a date attached and my name on it, because on this channel, we don't make predictions without accountability. If Allegretti keeps up the progression he showed today in his return, by August 26th, final roster cutdown day, he's going to be firmly locked in as Washington's starting center, with 0 real competition behind him. If I'm wrong, I'll say so on the channel, no excuses. Alright, take a breath with me for a second, because we just went through an emotional roller coaster with the Allegretti and Biadasz story, but what happened today on the transaction front is heavy too, so let's take it slow and go piece by piece. Washington made a total of 6 roster moves today, and when a team shuffles 6 pieces in a single day, 10 days out from final cutdown, that's not background noise. That's a front office racing against the clock to get to the regular season with the best possible 53-man group. Let's start with the cuts. Washington released kicker Jake Moody and punter Matt Haack. We'd already been hearing rumblings about Moody since yesterday, so I won't spend too much time on the recap, but I do want to flag the real consequence of that move. Drew Stevens, the undrafted rookie, is now the only kicker on Washington's entire roster. And he didn't get there by default. Today, in field goal drills, Stevens hit all 6 of his attempts, including a 60-yard try that bounced off the crossbar and still counted as good. That's a statement. The competition is over, and it ended about as decisively as it possibly could have. As for Haack, he's out because Tress Way returned to practice after working through an injury he'd been carrying since the start of camp. So punting duties go right back to the usual Pro Bowler. Now the additions, which are the ones that actually raise real questions. Washington signed linebacker Chris Barnes, defensive tackle Morris Hurst II, tight end Trey McKitty, and running back Craig Reynolds. Let's go player by player, because each signing tells a different story about what's happening behind the scenes in Ashburn. Chris Barnes has 6 years in the league, stops in Green Bay, Arizona, and Carolina, and 303 career tackles, 16 for a loss, and a sack. Not a glamorous name, but real, proven depth in a linebacker room that had a notable absence today. Jordan Magee wasn't at practice. And here's another piece nobody's connecting yet. Ale Cajo left Friday's 20-7 win over Miami in the 4th quarter, right after picking off a pass, with an injury that still hasn't been made public. Coincidence that Washington signs a veteran linebacker 48 hours after that play? Honestly, I doubt it. I think we're seeing the direct fallout of an injury the team isn't ready to confirm publicly yet. Maurice Hurst II is the name that catches my eye the most out of this whole group. 31 years old, All-American at Michigan, with stops at the Raiders, 49ers, and Browns. Washington brings him in right as Johnny Newton, their starting defensive tackle, is dealing with an injury that also kept him out of today's practice. The red here is direct. If Newton needs time to recover, Washington can't afford to drop the quality at the interior point of attack on the defensive line, especially with Darren Payne carrying most of the load. Hurst gives Dan Quinn a real, proven rotational option while the Newton situation gets sorted out. Craig Reynolds is here because Jerome Ford, one of the veteran additions Washington brought in this offseason at running back, is hurt. And Jeremy McNichols is also dealing with a quad injury. Fun detail on Reynolds, he was once a teammate of offensive coordinator David Blau, so there's a direct connection there that probably sped the decision along. And as for Trey McKitty, he joins a tight end room where extra depth behind Zach Ertz and John Bates, who, as I just told you, returned from injury today, never hurts. To close out the transaction news, Washington placed both Jerome Ford and receiver River Crackraft on injured reserve. That confirms, in case anyone was still holding out hope, that Ford's injury is more serious than it first looked, and that Crackraft's season, unfortunately, is probably over before it really started. My full read on this whole package of moves is this. And I'll give it to you straight, Adam Peters is operating exactly the way a general manager of a team that's serious about competing for a title needs to operate in August. He's not waiting for injuries to pile up and catch him flat-footed in week 1. He's patching every hole the moment it shows up with proven, road-tested players instead of long-term development bets, because at this point on the calendar, there's no time left to develop anybody. Washington has to be ready by September 13th when they open the regular season in Philadelphia against the Eagles. That's the date that actually matters to this franchise, and everything we're seeing this week, from Allegretti coming back to Hurst signing, is this front office making sure the roster that gets on the plane to Philadelphia is the deepest one possible. And to close things out, let's talk about someone I personally love, because he's got that underdog energy this fan base eats up. Jackery Krosky Merritt. Bill, the running back Washington drafted in the 7th round, who ended up being one of the nicest surprises of last season. Bill shows up to year 2 with a noticeably different body. According to Scott Abraham of Woosay 9, who spoke with him after today's practice, Krosky Merritt cleaned up his diet and spent a lot more time in the weight room during the offseason, and the result is a frame that's clearly bigger and stronger than what we saw during his rookie year. And this connects directly to what we just talked about in the last story regarding backfield depth. With Jerome Ford hurt and now on injured reserve, and Jeremy McNichols dealing with that quad injury, the door for Bill to lock down this backfield is wider open than it's ever been. As a rookie, Krosky Merritt rushed for 804 yards and earned NFL Rookie of the Week honors 4 separate times. For a 7th round pick, that's an outstanding rookie season. But the detail that really stands out to me, the one I think people are sleeping on, is this. Washington hasn't had a 1,000-yard rusher since 2021, when Antonio Gibson hit 1,037. 5 years without a true bell cow in this franchise. And this season brought in a completely reshaped room with Rashad White, Jaden Daniels' former college teammate, and Jerome Ford as the veteran additions, plus a 6th round pick in Katron Allen, and undrafted rookie signing Robert Henry Jr. out of UTSA. It's a deep, versatile group, but there's still no clear bell cow, and the coaching staff wants that to change in 2026. Bill seems to understand exactly what his job is. In his own words to Abraham, "I just know that I have to be consistent. It's in my reach. You know what I'm saying? If I'm consistent, that's my #1 goal too. That's the first thing that I wrote down. Being consistent and everything else will take care of itself. If I do that, I'll be good." That doesn't sound like a guy waiting to be handed the job. That sounds like somebody who already did the math. And today in practice, Bill backed those words up with action. He had a good day out of the backfield, showing off the vision that defines him as a runner. He made a beautiful cut to avoid Mike Sainristil on the opening play of team run drills, and added 3 more positive runs after that. Where he's still got work to do is in the passing game. Last year he had just 9 catches for 68 yards on 13 targets, and the coaching staff is pushing him hard to improve as a receiver and as a pass protector. That growth is already showing up in camp based on what came out of Ashburn today. My prediction on Bill, date attached. By September 13th, opening day in Philadelphia, Krosky Merritt is going to line up as Washington's starting running back, ahead of both White and Allen. Not because the roster lacks other valid options, but because the coaching staff is already seeing in camp what the rest of us are just starting to suspect, that Bill stopped being a 7th round surprise and became the foundation Cliff Kingsbury wants to build this ground game around. And if I'm wrong, you already know I'll correct it on the channel. And that's everything I've got for you today, fam. Heavy day, a strange one with an image that's hard to watch on the Biadash side and Allegretti coming back on the other. Almost like football wanted to remind us how fragile all of this really is. But it's also a day that leaves me feeling good about how Adam Peters is building this roster, move by move, without waiting for things to break before he reacts. Washington heads toward August 26th with more clarity than they had a week ago. We know who the kicker is, we know who's back on the line, we know who's grabbing the starting running back job by the horns. Less than a month to go until September 13th, until Philadelphia, until everything we're watching in camp actually starts to count for real. I'll be here every single day, bringing you every move the moment it happens, because this season has all the makings of one we're gonna remember for a long time. If this video gave you something, even just one detail to bring up in your group chat, drop a like, subscribe, and tell me down in the comments. Do you think letting Biadasz walk turned out to be the right call, or are you still with the crowd that thought Washington got it wrong? I want to read every single answer. See you in the next one. Hail to the Commanders always.